you are aware that it is Wellness Week, and this is just this is one of the events for Wellness Week. We've had a few already, and we've got more tomorrow. So thank you again for joining us. I want to make sure everyone can hear me and see my screen. So if you know how, can you give like a thumbs up if you can hear me and see the screen? Okay, I got a thumbs up from one person. Maybe nobody else knows how to. Okay, thank you. Okay, gotcha. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So also, if you are logged in right now and your full first and last name isn't displayed, if you could press the three little dots by your name and make sure that your first and last name is displayed. We just want to be able to make sure that we know who is all in the room, and by attending this event, you will actually be entered into a raffle for a Fitbit Versa as part of our wellness program. Shannon's gonna kill me because I just blanked on the name of the program, but and it's an incentive program where if you attend our events, for each event you attend that is hosted by us, you will have your name entered into a raffle for a Fitbit Versa at the end of the semester. And if you attend 3 events, you'll automatically win a small prize from our office. So we really hope to see you all at more events, but big thank you for coming to this one. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me introduce myself. My name is Brittani Clarkson. I am one of the health promotion or health education specialists here in the Office of Health Promotion. One of my biggest responsibilities is to bring education to the campus about different health and wellness topics. So today we're going to talk about healthy relationships and exactly what it looks like to be hashtag relationship goals. If you have, there's not a ton of us on today, so we can have this to be very interactive. So if you would like to ask a question or if you would like to jump in with an opinion, definitely feel free to take yourself off mute and go ahead and pitch in on the conversation. That's totally fine. So some of the things that we'll be talking about during our Lunch and Learn today is actually what a relationship is. We'll talk about characteristics of healthy, unhealthy, and abusive relationships, and ultimately how to support either yourself or somebody else who is currently in an unhealthy relationship. So here in the Office of Health Promotion, we subscribe to this model called the 8 dimensions of wellness. This basically is a theory, a thought, an idea that says that your wellness is made up of 8 total areas. So whether or not you are practicing wellness is not just about if you're sick or not, right? If you have a cold or a flu or a cancer or something like that, there's actually 8 different areas that make up your total well-being as a person. And in practicing wellness is the process of becoming aware of that and making choices towards being well and living a healthy and fulfilled life. So one of those dimensions is social wellness, and that's where everything that we're going to talk about today falls into. So social wellness is having positive interactions with other people. So having positive relationships with other people, enjoying being around other people, maintaining boundaries, caring for others, letting others care for you. All of that makes up a socially well person. So let's start by defining what a relationship is. Does anybody want to come off mute and say how they define relationship? Okay, if not, that's okay. That's fine. So I've heard students say before that, they don't really know what a relationship is, or they think of a relationship as something that's romantic or intimate. But relationship is actually a very broad term. It can mean quite a few things. So basically, it's the way in which two or more people are connected. So you have a relationship with your classmates. You have a relationship with your lab partner. You have a relationship with your roommate. It may not be a strong, a deep, or intimate relationship, but you're connected by a single or multiple tie, that being you're in class together, or you room together, or you're in a group together. So that creates a relationship. Relationships that are also really common is the state of being connected. So the state of having a specific connection with someone else, like saying you are connected to a person because that is your sister or your brother. So that sibling connection is your relationship. And then the way in which two or more people actually behave towards each other. So having like a supervisor and employee relationship, you are connected by those two roles. So you can't treat you typically don't treat a supervisor the same way that you would treat, your fellow employee. You would usually, show a little bit more respect because they, decide when you're going to be on your shift and if you're going to get paid or not, by giving you hours. So you would treat them a little bit differently than you would treat just somebody who, is on your shift with you. And the same thing goes for like a romantic relationship. You would treat somebody that you were dating a lot different than you would just treat like, a good friend or an acquaintance. So really the definition of a relationship is not as deep as we tend to make it, but it's also remembering that you have a relationship with just about every person that you've met. It just depends on what the nature of that relationship is. And so we're going to talk about a couple of different relationship types today. And this information that I'm going to be sharing today can apply to each one of these relationship types. So don't think that everything we're going to be talking about is just for those romantic relationships. You can apply everything to each of these relationship types. So just kind of keep that open-mindedness when we're talking about some more of the finer details. So the relationship types that we'll be talking about specifically are family relationships, acquaintanceships, friendships, romantic relationships, which is a big one for usually a lot of our audience. They have a lot of questions about romantic relationships. And then we won't talk about professional relationships, but that is a relationship type that is worth noting. So starting with family relationships. So your relationship with your family, and again, these are kind of typical characteristics. Everyone has a different situation. Families are different. No one family is exactly the same, and no one person views their family relationships exactly the same. So if these don't really apply to you, they're just kind of a general characteristics of this type of relationship. So in your family relationships, your family actually teaches you how to function in and with the world. So think about how you grew up and the household that you grew up. That's where you most likely learned rules and you learned problem solving. So I know when I was a kid, I came from a big family, and anytime we had a argument, which was a lot of the times, we argued over a toy or over the TV, or, when I got older, we argued over who was going to take the keys to the car. My mom was just like, y'all need to figure it out with yourselves, right? So we immediately learned things like mediation and problem solving and compromise within the home, and that those lessons that we learned extended out into how we treated our friends at school, our co-workers, and eventually our romantic partners. So you learn a lot of your social skills and how to interact with other people first by interacting with your family, the people that you live with 24/7. Again, you learn how to treat others and how to be treated, knowing, oh, I always hated when my brother, used to take my stuff away. That may become a thing that you have with your roommate, like, please don't touch my, pencils. My brother would always take my pencils and he would break them, and I would just not have anything to write with. So that's something, you tell your roommate, because you learned that was triggering, or that's just something you did not like that you experienced in your home. Typically, our families provide love, warmth, and support. And again, this is just a very general overview, but a lot of folks feel like, your family is where you come back to be comfortable. Like, that's your home base. Like, I know that my mom, when I was living at home, she just would nag and get on my nerves. But when I had a terrible day at school, or when I had a terrible day at work, I would come home and my mom would be the one to comfort me. And so I knew that coming back home would be, the place where I could receive support. And then you can tell that, how it feels when you don't have support at home. We talked about conflict resolution at home. And then a lot of students who are at college or on campus for the first time and away from their parents realize that relationships within the family dramatically change. So being away from home for the first time, maybe you're starting to feel like, you don't talk to your parents as much as you did when you were living at home, or you don't see your siblings or talk to your siblings or even text your siblings as much as you did when you were living at home. And so it's not that those relationships are in any way diminished, they just kind of change over time. You're closer, you may be closer with your parents more now that you're on your own as an adult than you were when you were in the house. And that's completely fine. It's nothing to say that relationship wasn't great. They just change. And then in that change, interactions become a choice. So now, instead of, being forced to pass through the kitchen and speak to your family, now you have to make the choice to call them. You have to set aside time to speak with them. And so that, again, teaches us a lot of ways to react and have relationships with those outside of our family. So the next relationship type we'll talk about is acquaintanceships. And so acquaintanceships are probably the biggest, account for the biggest amount of your relationships. Now, acquaintances are people that you encounter, but aren't necessarily your friends or relatives. So, that one person that you have in class that you kind of recognize their name, but you don't know them. You just know of them and know that they exist, basically. So your contact with them is minimal. It's usually very polite and respectful, because you just don't know them well enough to, I guess, be impolite or disrespectful. So you just keep it very surface, maybe smile, if even that. There's no commitment to remaining acquaintances. You could never see, an acquaintance ever again, and it really wouldn't have that much effect on your life. Now, acquaintanceships often can evolve into friendships. So at one point in time, even your best friend was just an acquaintance, and it has evolved into something that was more intimate, with more commitment. And then acquaintanceships are actually great for networking. They're useful for what we like to call one-time collaborations. So if you network and you meet a person who works where you would like to eventually start your career, you take their card, you don't have any kind of real commitment or relationship with this person other than the fact that you know their name and how to get in touch with them. But later on down the road, you can use that contact that you had that one time to hopefully propel you into a career. So that's where acquaintanceships can be really, really useful for networking and then evolving into deeper friendships or relationships. Now, when we hit the friendship stage, this is where, it's fun. Folks say that friendships are the family that you get to choose. So friendships occur when two people meet and then they develop some sort of chemistry, right? So typically, I know when I was growing up and I would hear the term chemistry, that was like a romance, right? Oh, they had chemistry, but that's not always, you know, how it can be used. So chemistry is just, you know, when two people react to each other in a very positive way, that they, you know, decide that, hey, I could spend some time with this person and that would be, you know, fun. So friendships usually occur when two people find that they have similar interests and values, and it usually stays at a platonic level. So platonic meaning that there is no romantic feelings, there's no romantic or sexual attraction. It's just very, you know, I enjoy your company, you enjoy my company, we like the same things, we're interested in the same things, let's hang out. So friendships can exist on a very wide spectrum, right? Everyone's got their definitions or their thresholds for what a friend is. You know, some people are very stringent and very particular about who they call their friend, but then you've got people like my 3-year-old son, who if you see him at the grocery store and you wave, then he is now your friend, right? So friendship means a little bit something different to everyone. You know, I've heard, oh, they're my friend, but they're not my friend. Like, I don't know what it means when you say it twice, but I guess there's more emphasis, right? Or that's my good friend, or we're best friends, or that's my work bestie, or that's my, my college friend or my camp friend. So it exists on a spectrum. There's no rules to who you can call your friend or anything like that. So it's just something you sort out for yourselves. Friendships should be mutually beneficial. So that means that you should give as much as you get out of the friendship, right? It should be reciprocal. Anything that's just one-sided, so if you're just giving and giving and giving to another person, giving emotionally, giving your time, giving your finances, that's not really a friendship. I like to call that like a sponsorship because you're not getting anything back. And friendship should be reciprocal. You should give and you should get. You should give and you should take. And then the closeness of friendships, just like families, it can fluctuate over time, right? And friendships have a lot to do with either the space that you're in, the things that you're interested in, or your location. So I've got a best friend who's actually deploying to Afghanistan. So although we've been best friends almost all our lives, that relationship is going to lose its closeness because she is geographically leaving, you know, the area where it makes it easy for us to speak. So I won't, you know, she can be in another time zone. So we will just naturally become a little bit less close. That doesn't devalue the friendship. That's just kind of the nature of life, right? So we were going to play a game called Squad Goals. I don't know how to take y'all off of mute, so but I kind of want to get your opinions about a couple of sets of friends, how you would describe their friendship, how if you think they have positive qualities, negative qualities, and if they can be friends in real life. Let me see. So let's see if I can get this going for y'all. So I'm actually going to ask to unmute you. You don't have to unmute yourself unless you have something you'd like to contribute. But okay, so we're going to start this activity called Squad Goals. So the first pair of friends is Marlon and Dory from Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. So would anybody like to describe this friendship?
They get different perspectives from one another is
Yeah.
one thing that comes to the top of my head.
Awesome. Anyone else? All right, what about positive qualities or negative qualities that exist within these two?
They're both kind of mutually supporting each other in along like their different journeys to achieve whatever objectives that they're trying to achieve in that movie.
Yeah, that's a good one, right? So Marlon had this goal of getting his son back, and Dory, she really could have used a companion. So they had that reciprocal relationship. I know one thing that was, negative about their relationship is that Marlon kind of saw himself as almost superior to Dory because she, had her short-term memory loss, and he felt like he was babysitting her. And so he kind of put himself above, he put himself above her by saying, there's things you can't do and you're slowing me down and things like that. So that was, a bit negative. So do we think this friendship could last in real life? If Marlon and Dory were two real people, do you think that they would be friends in real life?
I think yes, but they would probably, like Dory would probably have to have some strong boundaries in, him thinking of himself as superior, I
Yeah,
guess.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, boundaries, definitely important. So let's do one more. Okay, this one's my favorite one because I love The Big Bang Theory. So I'll go ahead and describe this relationship. So for those, if you have not seen The Big Bang Theory or don't regularly watch it or even have seen one episode, these two, they're just really smart scientists. They're, geniuses for all intents and purposes. And Sheldon, who's the one in the blue shirt sitting at the computer, he's got a lot of very skewed kind of social, I guess, I don't even know how to say it. His social skills are just off. They're very off, and he comes off as selfish and rude and really crass. Just he doesn't really think about others and the way things make them feel. He's very blunt. He tells it like it is. He means well. He just doesn't execute well. And then Leonard has more of the general social skills that most people, I guess would claim to have. But they have this relationship where, Sheldon's constantly, making fun of him, putting him down, but also really needs him. And then Leonard, who's the one standing up in the brown jacket, he kind of he just takes it until he can't anymore. And then he blows up and they have a fight. And then he's like, oh, well, that's just the way you are. Let's be friends again. So it's a very interesting dynamic. So they've got a lot of positive qualities, and that they take care of each other and they care about each other. But the negative qualities are that Sheldon's definitely crossing boundaries often, and Leonard doesn't really hold him accountable to a lot of this stuff. He just writes it off as that's just the way it is. So this probably could be a friendship in real life. I'm not sure if it would last. It would be very taxing on Leonard's personal life, which it is in the show. So, but it makes for funny entertainment. All right, so romantic relationships. So we've gone through family relationships, acquaintanceships, friendships. So romantic relationships. So these are relationships that produce, or two people or people show feelings of strong attraction and attachment to each other. Often there is either the goal of love or actual love that connects the two, or the people in this type of relationship together. There are some theories about romantic relationships and theories about love, and one theory says that in romantic relationships there's really three main attributes, and that's commitment to the other person, intimacy, the other person, and then passion. So commitment being just the feeling of responsibility to and for the other person. Intimacy is just being able to be vulnerable with that person. So intimacy doesn't always mean like sex or sexual activity. Intimacy can be something as, telling them about your childhood traumas, or letting them know what scares you, or your goals or your dreams. Just letting that person into your, innermost thoughts and feelings that you wouldn't tell, an acquaintance or sometimes even a friend. And then passion, usually that's the sexual attraction, the physical attraction, just having like strong, intense feelings for another person. So romantic relationships can exist with or without sexual activity. And typically people in a romantic relationship will prioritize their romantic relationships higher than other relationships. I know on social media, it seems to be this comparison, or this competition that comes up every so often about like, do you put your mom in the front seat, or do you let your girlfriend have the front seat? And that's up to the particular person. But when I talk about prioritizing a romantic relationship higher than other relationships, you're usually prioritizing your time, right? So you're spending more time with this romantic relationship. You're usually spending more resources on this romantic relationship. You're usually spending more energy trying to build up this type of relationship. So that's kind of what I mean by prioritizing it higher than others. And then romantic relationships are typically longer term relationships. And what I mean by longer term is that a person will go into a romantic relationship with long term in mind, right? Very few people go into a romantic relationship to say, okay, we're going to do this romantic thing for, the next month and then we'll be done, right? They typically are aiming for long term, or at least as long as, it serves them. So now that we've kind of gone through the different types of relationships and how those are defined, I want to go through what are characteristics of a healthy relationship. And again, this can be attributed to not just the romantic relationships, but really all of the relationships, kind of minus the acquaintanceships, because that's somebody you just don't really know or invested in. So healthy relationships consist of communication first and foremost. Because if the relationship didn't consist of communication, then it's more of an acquaintanceship. Like you need to talk, communicate with each other in order to label it as a familiar or as a relationship, really. Then there's trust, and these are not really in any order, but they're all very important characteristics when thinking about what's healthy. Accountability, so being able to hold expectations for the other person, and then being able to hold expectations for you. So kind of what that looks like is, I use myself as an example a lot, not because I like to talk about myself, but because it's easy and I don't mind. But right now my husband is in school, and so he's doing school like many students here at SAM. He's doing school virtually, so he is at the kitchen table studying, right? So if he's supposed to be studying and really he's on the couch watching like Great British Bake Off or something like that, hey, you supposed to be over there studying. And I just hold him accountable because I know that's a goal of his, and I'm his partner in this. So that's kind of a role that I take on to hold him accountable. And he also holds me accountable when I spend too much money at Hobby Lobby. So it's mutual. Mutual support. So feeling like the person you're in this relationship with supports you just as much as you support them. Having a choice. So choice is really important in the healthy part of relationships. Having a choice to be in that relationship, so not being forced. If you're forced to be in this relationship, it's not much of a healthy relationship. And then having the freedom to do things that you would like to do. Shared responsibility. Let's see. Economic partnership. So this kind of does tend more to romantic relationships, but it could also be a friendship. But not being the person in the relationship who is solely dependent on for economic prosperity or benefits, so money. Now this can look like a couple of different things, but it's a relationship is healthier when there is an agreement about how the relationship will work financially. Now that can look like a bunch of different things, but as long as there is an agreement and it's a partnership, that's where the healthiness is contingent upon. Negotiation and fairness, non-threatening behavior, and then maturity. All characteristics of healthy relationships. And I'm sure there are many, many others. These are just ones that we like to list and point out because we feel like they're very foundational. So on the flip side, characteristics of an unhealthy relationship are the exact opposite of those things that I just listed. So things like dishonesty, having a lack of trust, or your partner having a lack of trust in you, being unable to compromise, intense jealousy, being forced to give access to email or social media. That's one that we have heard quite a bit, and we know that kind of happens with romantic relationships in the kind of in the college age. Is let me see your phone, or give me your passwords, I want to see who's DMing you, and that's just very unhealthy, because going back up a couple of bullets, that proves a lack of trust. Having double standards, sharing confidential relationship details. Now, I actually kind of got called out because a student was like, well, I tell my girls, whenever my boyfriend, makes me mad, and I don't think that's unhealthy. So, venting is one thing, that's not a problem. But if you're in a relationship or a friendship or someone from your family, and you are telling other people maybe of like a medical diagnosis or something that they shared to you in a deeply personal, intimate detail, sharing those kind of details is very unhealthy, because now that's fostering dishonesty and lack of trust. But talking to your support system about how your partner, your sister, your friend got on your nerves on last Thursday, that's fine. When one person feels smothered, or like they can't be by themselves, when there's disrespect, or if there's extreme dependence on the relationship. So feelings of, if this person's not around, then I can't operate, or, I can't, I don't have the courage to, get dressed and go to the store without this person, or I need this person to tell me, how to dress or how to eat. That can be a bit unhealthy. So we hear a lot about, red flags in a relationship. And a lot of those red flags can come from some of those unhealthy characteristics. But I also want to point out that there are green flags in a relationship, things that kind of are reassuring, that go back to our characteristics of healthy relationships. So you're looking for relationships that have more green flags than red flags. I will say that we'll talk about abusive relationships in just a moment, but one of the biggest differences between unhealthy characteristics and abusive characteristics is that you can rebound from unhealthy characteristics, usually through communication, sometimes counseling. But if there is a lack of trust in your relationship, and it's something that you can work through, unhealthy characteristics and unhealthy relationships can cause stress, but if you're willing to work at it to keep the relationship they can be, dealt with, and you can start to see some of those red flags disappear and some more of those green flags pop up. So you definitely have to decide for yourself, what is a red flag and how can you combat those red flags with green flags. So one of those ways is managing conflict. So conflict is just, it's natural. It's a part of life. Not every person on earth is going to agree with you. You are not going to agree with other people. There's no two people that 100% agree on everything. So conflict is always a possibility. And it's a natural thing in any type of relationship. It just comes from two different people being two different people, and it is okay. Conflicts can actually bring people in a relationship together if they manage it correctly. So we have just a couple of tips on how you can manage conflict within a relationship. You want to be assertive, but be calm and respectful. So when I say be assertive, I mean to, stand your ground in saying how you feel and making sure that you are heard. But you want to do that in a calm way that's not blaming or that's not deflecting onto the other person. You want to be empathetic, so being able to understand where the other person is coming from, because ultimately you want them to understand where you're coming from. So showing that you can be understanding will definitely be an example to that other person to show that they can, ask them to be understanding with you. You want to acknowledge your own feelings and possibly where those came from. It's kind of it's very important to acknowledge your own feelings, because if you don't even know how you feel, it's hard to communicate that to another person. But then you also want to own your own feelings. Know that these are your feelings, and that the other person may have done something to trigger those feelings, but the other person did not put those feelings within you, right? So if my, let's just say my colleague who sits right next to me, Taylor, if she's, making a bunch of noise and I can't concentrate and I get angry, right? Taylor didn't put anger inside of me. That's my own anger. I have to own that. What she did do though was, make a bunch of noise, and it probably wasn't intentional. I'm sure it wasn't, but that noise level made me angry. So I have to be able to be calm and respectful and acknowledge that I'm angry over noise, which, other people might not be. I just may be having a bad day. And kind of approach it from that perspective rather than you made me angry. Well, Taylor didn't make me angry. Taylor made noise, right? I got angry, okay? Ask for clarification. This just helps conflicts from spinning off into tangents and holes that you can't get back from. Allow a person to blow off steam. Sometimes, we want to, argue now and settle things now, but really we're all humans. Sometimes we just need to go off and calm down before we can rationally talk things out. So that includes taking just a time out, take a break, and coming back to an issue when we can be level-headed about it. Criticize constructively. So if you're going to bring up if I'm going to tell Taylor, hey, you're making a lot of noise over there, I need to be constructive about it. Taylor, I understand that you are working hard and you produced some very good events. I didn't know if you knew that you were just a bit, noisy. So you definitely want to be positive and constructive. You want to use I statements. This goes back to acknowledging and owning your own feelings. I feel upset, Taylor, that you're making so much noise, opposed to you made me angry for making so much noise. Because when you use you statements, you force the person that you're having a conflict with to be defensive, to be put on the defense. So when you've got two defensive people in a conflict, nothing is going to get solved. So it's all about owning your own feelings, owning how you felt, rather than blaming and putting someone else on the defense. As always, compromise, and then knowing when to listen and to offer solutions. So all of those are really great ways to begin managing your conflicts. So I'm going to play a video, and this is just about, hopefully you'll be able to hear it. Shannon, if you can put in the chat, if you're not able to hear it, then I won't bother playing it. But this video is a really good, I think, way to look at how sometimes you just want to talk, right? You don't want to argue. You don't want to fix the situation. Sometimes you just want to just let it out. And so it's called It's Not About the Nail. Oops, sorry. Okay. Maybe we won't get sound. Sorry, everyone. But anyway, so I'll just kind of describe the video, but it's this woman, and you can kind of see before the video even started, she's got like this nail in her, sticking out of her head. And the person she's talking about how she's just got this pain and a lot of pressure, and she keeps like putting on sweaters and they get snagged, and you know, she can't get her mind off of it. And the person who she's talking to is like, well, maybe if you took the nail out of your head. And she's like, it's not about the nail. And every time he tries to offer up a solution about like just yanking that thing out, getting that nail out, she's getting more and more frustrated, because for her, it's not about the nail. She just wants somebody to listen to her commiserate about her head hurting, right? So yes, she's got a nail in her forehead that would be, you know, relieve all her problems by taking that off, but that's not the point, right? And so sometimes in a relationship, it's not the point. Like, I think we as people try to fix others when that's not the issue, and that can cause more conflicts, because, you know, people may not be living their lives the way we think they should. So that can drive a lot of conflicts. Well, what I would do, you know, and that's rarely what folks want to hear. So just, you know, next time you're facing a little bit of conflict, just, you know, try to figure out what exactly the person is needing from you, and ask yourself, is it about the nail, or is it really just about something deeper? So if you have time, definitely go to YouTube and search for It's Not About the Nail. It's a really good video. All right, so I want to speak quickly about consent and boundaries, because these are very important in every type of relationship that you'll ever be in. So consent, we usually think of consent when we're talking about situations where sexual activity is going to take place, but really consent can be applied to many aspects of your life. So consent is basically, in a nutshell, making sure that whatever is going to happen or occur is okay. Everyone is agreed upon it. There's a general consensus that yes, this can happen. Let's do it. Woohoo! So consent is mutual, meaning all parties must consent, right? If one person says yes, I give my consent, but another person says no, I don't, then there is not consent in the situation. Consent is freely given, meaning it can't be like coerced or blackmailed or forced out of someone. So, you know, if I say, you know, I need you to let me borrow your car. If you don't, I'm going to leak all this information about you online. Like, that's not freely given, because that's blackmail, basically. So that's not consent. If the person gives me their car, they weren't able to provide true consent. Consent must be informed, meaning you should know all the pieces of what you're saying yes to. So think of a contract. You should be able to read and agree to everything in this contract and agree with everything in this contract. If you don't, then, or if you're misrepresenting something, then it's not true consent. Also, you must be able to mentally be able to consent. So being free of anything that would cause you to not be, I guess, attached to reality, like being intoxicated, or being high, or having some kind of mental distress. And when it comes to sexual contact, the person consenting must be over the age of consent, which is 17 in the state of Texas. Consent also has to be enthusiastic. So the person doesn't have to like jump for joy and say yes, cheerleading with pom-poms. But you know, it shouldn't be like they're reluctant or like they're feel like they have no other choice. You know, it should be something that the person is excited and, you know, very willing to consent to. And then consent is retractable, right? And this is very important in sexual situations where, you know, sexual activity can begin, or they could have said, yes, you know, I'm down for this activity. But in the middle, they decide that it's not for them. Right at that point where they say, you know, no, I don't like this. No, thank you anymore. I take it back. I didn't mean it. Right then, the consent is gone, right? So just because they began with consent, they can take it away at any point in time. It is not a permanent thing. So thinking about boundaries are very important in all relationships, right? Think of boundaries as an instruction manual of how to treat another person versus like rules on how to treat another person. Boundaries help keep relationships healthy and secure. And it requires a deeper understanding of what each partner wants. So there's a bit of intimacy that's involved in boundary settings. But it doesn't have to be super deep. Boundaries can be as surface as, you know, I go to bed at 9 o'clock, so please don't get on the group me and chat at midnight. You know, that's a boundary. A deeper boundary can be like, you know, I was assaulted when I was, you know, younger, so please don't grab me from behind, or, you know, don't, you know, touch my back from behind because it startles me. You know, that could be a deeper boundary. But it allows the people in the relationship to feel safe and healthy and secure. When setting boundaries, you really have to know yourself. You know, if there's something that triggers you, makes you feel bad, the person that you're in a relationship with may not know that unless you tell them. So you have to know what your boundaries need to be. And then boundaries should not restrict the ability for the other person to go out with friends alone or participate in hobbies or keep things confidential, right? So I can't say that my boundary is that I need you to, you know, give me all your passwords because I have trust issues. No, that's not how boundaries work. So the difference between consent and boundaries is consent requires all parties to be on the same page, right? But boundaries can be specific to one person and they must be respected by the others. So both people in the relationship don't have to have the same boundaries, right? So I go to bed at, you know, 9, my husband goes to bed at, you know, midnight, right? So text him till midnight if you want to, don't text me, right? Those are not the same boundaries. They're just specific, you know, to me. And then boundaries must be respected by others. So boundaries and consent all hinge on trust and communication, right? So trust that you will respect the boundaries, or trust that you will respect my decision to consent or not to consent. And then communication, checking in, you know, with consent, like, is this good? Are you okay? Is this bothering you? And the same thing with boundaries. So it's all about trust and communications. And then when talking about sex in healthy relationships, again, I said earlier that relationships, romantic relationships can include sex, or they don't have to. But in a healthy relationship, both partners or all partners should feel ready and comfortable with sexual activity, right? It shouldn't feel like one side is forcing this issue. And if you're thinking about when to include sex into your romantic relationships, you definitely want to have that communication. Talk about what your sex expectations are. Agree on what safer sex practices you want to use. Be honest and open, communicate openly communicate. And remember that relationships are not a blanket form of consent, right? Saying, oh, well, that's my, partner, that's my girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever, that doesn't automatically mean you have consent. You still have to get consent in a relationship. So we talked about healthy and unhealthy characteristics, but there are a couple of abusive characteristics I'd like to cover really quickly. I know our time is running out. So the difference, remember I said earlier that in an unhealthy relationship, those characteristics can cause stress, but they can be worked through. That's not the case for abusive relationships, right? Characteristics of abusive relationships are not typically something that can be worked through or resolved except by dissolving that relationship. Because typically, if someone is committed to some of these characteristics, it's something that they're choosing to do. And whether or not they say they're going to, stop or change, they've devoted themselves or it's in their personality to do these things. And so it's typically only solved by dissolving the relationship. And these are much more dangerous than just the unhealthy behaviors. So abusive relationships look like isolation. So keeping, a person from their family or friends or support system, being manipulated, being sabotaged, misplacing guilt. So something like, they're off cheating, but they come back and start yelling at you for not checking in or for being this or being that and making you feel like you've done something wrong. It's also called gaslighting. Physical or verbal attacks, using unsafe sex methods when you've agreed on safe sex methods, making you feel like you're obligated or forcing you to have sex, stalking, betrayal, cheating, and ignoring your boundaries. These are all characteristics of abusive relationships that can escalate into some very dangerous things. And the reason why it's really hard to believe someone when they say that they're going to stop, isolating you or stop stalking you or stop forcing you to have sex is because these come from folks who only care about power and control, right? So when it comes to healthy relationships, it's all about trust and communication, but abusive relationships are all about power and control. So this person wants to control you and everything you do, and they want to exert a certain amount of power, over the person that they're, doing these things to. So when it comes to recognizing an unhealthy relationship, so say you've got a friend or someone who you think might be in an unhealthy relationship, these are some of the things that it can look like, right? It can look like that person neglecting their grooming habits or changing their beauty routines. Maybe they used to wear tighter fitting clothes, or they used to wear bright clothes, or something that really showed off that personality, but now they're wearing like baggy pants and big sweaters to kind of hide themselves. Chances are that's the person who's another person is forcing them to change the way that they usually express themselves. It can look like physical wounds, being less social. So maybe they're not coming out as often or not socializing online, or coming to spots that you normally hang out with as often. That person looking like they feel less confident or distracted. They may be attached to their phone just in case their partner calls and they have to pick up, or else it could be trouble for them later. They may be giving vague relationship details, or even trying to overcompensate and say, oh, this person is great and they treat me well and they buy me this, and all you asked was, how's your day? It's another sign when their other relationships start to break down, and that's kind of that isolation really playing. And then if their communication habits change, maybe they used to send you, their outfits of the day on, Instagram or Snapchat, and now you know, they don't do that anymore. Now they just kind of talk to you or text you when they see you. So these are just, you know, a couple of characteristics that somebody might be going through an unhealthy relationship. So it's always a good idea that if you're seeing somebody go through these things, just asking about it, you know, don't dance around the subject, just, you know, be straight up and ask them, you know, hey, are you okay? It seems like you've got these bruises that aren't healing, you know, what's going on? Just really being there for that person. And then it's just a few ways to support someone who might be going through an abusive relationship. Start that conversation. You know, sometimes we're worried about getting in somebody else's business where we feel like we don't belong, but don't be afraid to start the conversation. Start it on a positive note. You know, they may already be feeling shamed that they're in an abusive relationship. So starting it on a positive note kind of helps to disarm them and remind them that, you know, you just care about them. Listen to understand, don't necessarily listen to respond. Again, it's not about the nail. You just want to get them talking and get them to open up. Be supportive. Don't be preachy. Again, they might already be feeling shamed about being in a abusive relationship. They may feel like it's their fault or it's their fault for not leaving. So you don't want to be, you know, real preachy or parental. You just want to be somebody that they can talk to. Don't blame them for staying. Ultimately, this is really difficult, but allow them to make their own decisions, right? I saw a statistic that said that it takes almost 7 times for a person to leave an abusive relationship. So this may be time number 1, 2, or 3 for them. So they're going to have to make their own decision about getting out of that relationship. Definitely offer them some solutions and resources, but don't push them to take those solutions or resources. And then if they are in immediate danger, definitely stay with them and then call for help. I always say, don't put your Superman cape on and storm into the apartment and beat up, you know, the other person, because it's not going to go down in a very great way. And you don't want to put yourself in danger. But if they are fearing for their lives, or if they feel that they are in immediate physical, you know, danger, definitely stay with them. Contact UPD. You know, just get them the help without putting yourself in harm's way. So some local and campus resources that you can take advantage of if you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, or even needs some help through an unhealthy relationship, or just wants relationship help in general, because we could all use a little bit. The Title IX office, this says the Student Affairs Annex, but they actually have relocated to the Thomason building, which is the building behind the administration building. Title IX office can take complaints that students have regarding sexual assaults, discrimination, different things like that. So they have a whole list of resources that they can provide students, as well as take their complaints and listen to them. The Student Health Center on the first floor is a resource, as well as the Counseling Center. Now, both the Student Health Center and the Counseling Center are taking telehealth appointments. So in the past, the Counseling Center actually had like, well, they have group therapy, but everything is telehealth now. But if you are having issues with your roommate, you're having issues with, you know, your friends, or even if you need couples counseling, the Counseling Center does that too. There's the Student Legal and Mediation Services. They're in the LSC. The Safe House provides, you know, resources and a place to go for anyone who's experiencing abusive relationships. And then UPD and Huntsville PD are also resources. So any questions, definitely come off mute or put it in the chat if you have any questions. Okay, well, before I let you all leave, I do have a quick poll. Thank you again for coming and doing your lunch and learn. Hopefully you got some good food and some good info. And if you have any questions, there's our socials. You can also get in touch with me at healthpromotion@shsu.edu. So I have a quick poll that I'm going to launch, and if you could just take a few seconds to complete it, I would very much appreciate it. So thank you all. If you have any questions again, let me know. Thank you, Abigail. Yeah, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Oh, and I forgot, I have a crown on because it's my birthday. I just had to mention that. Didn't want to steal the show, but it's my birthday. So if you're a September baby, happy birthday to you too. Thank you, Coleman. Well, thank y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you for those. Just about everybody has taken the poll. So thank you so much. Again, if y'all have questions or comments or anything like that, definitely hit us up on Instagram or Twitter or on our email. Nobody does Facebook anymore, so don't worry about that. So y'all have a great day. Thank you.